We're just about to get started. Welcome to everyone who's online. Hello. Um, we are here today for the Business of Art, the Art of Business. Kristen Odle has been very generous in coming to give a presentation on visual merchandising today. You are here in the Kirstein Business Library and Innovation Center if you're here in person. For those of you online, you're always welcome to come visit us at the Central Library in Copley Square. We're down on the lower level. And here at Kablick, we have 4 big buckets that we operate out of under. So we've got our small business and entrepreneurship. We've got financial empowerment, job and career success, and innovation and technology. The virtue of the Business of Art, Art of Business series is that it's going to touch on all of these sections that we have specifically with how they apply to creative entrepreneurs. So if you're a maker, if you're an artist, if you're a craftsperson, if you're a tradesperson, you potentially will find something relevant to your business as part of this series. This series specifically is here to help everyone who is in the trades, the crafts, and the arts. So we are hoping to help build both financial literacy as well as entrepreneurship. And that way it doesn't feel quite so hard to manage your own business and your own practice as you operate. Previously in this series, we've had Paige Mulhern doing marketing and branding, and we had Merrick Goma come in and talk about fine art photography and grant writing and fellowships and residencies and things like that. In terms of what's coming up for other creative entrepreneurial programming, we have legal entities for creative entrepreneurs. You'll find that on our website. This is going to be particularly helpful if you're not sure if you want to be a sole proprietor or an LLC or something of that kind. If you even want to become a nonprofit, this is going to be the right program for you. And then also Kristen was saying that she has one. If you want to hop up and introduce it really fast.
Sure. Because I'll be talking about visual merchandising. I don't get into taxes and the financial pieces, but as part of my public programming series at North Bennett Street School in, I think it's April, sometime between Jan and May, Sunshine Tax will come and talk to us. It's free and open to the public. And she specializes in taxes for creatives, and she's just top-notch, absolute pro. You all are welcome.
Thank you for that. All right, so that's what's coming up on the horizon specifically for creatives. And now to introduce Kristen herself. Kristen has worked in retail service industry for over 25 years. In her current role managing the retail and curating exhibitions at the North Bennett Street School, she draws on a long history of supporting Boston's arts and maker community. Collaborating with artists, craftspeople, gallerists, curators, designers, and collectors. Her specialty lies in visual and product merchandising, as well as creating thoughtful displays for small business and creative spaces. Kristen leans into scrappy entrepreneurship, believing that your point of view, combined with the materials you already have, can go a long way in styling or curating a brand that feels authentic to you. And with that, I'll let Kristen take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending the afternoon with us. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me. This is such a great service that you provide, this area of the library. It's just awesome for anyone thinking of a creative career anyway. Anyway, thank you. I will introduce myself a little bit further. Elizabeth said most of it. My name's Kristen Odle. I've worked in creative retail operations for over 25 years, and currently my work involves curating and talking with craftspeople and showing their work, interviewing craftspeople and hand skills-based folk all over the country and the world, selling merch, and my own artistic practice of making handmade goods. Hi. And another little tidbit I'll add about myself, a beloved colleague recently recognized me as a materials girly. I'll take or leave the girly part, but materials, absolutely, yes. I love materials, and you're going to hear me talk about materials throughout this hour. Because I feel very strongly that they are key to effective visual merchandising, especially on a budget. The right materials can instantly communicate the story of your business and your brand. This is such a chaotic image, but it's here for a reason. Retail is fickle in my mind, and I'm sure most people's mind, retail is just fickle. I certainly haven't cracked any code, and I'm not sure anyone truly has. Sure, we have all the metrics in the world to tell us who buys what and when, but it's all based on societal trends, and as we all know, trends can shift with the slightest breeze or even a single viral post. You might grab that little gadget at your hardware store checkout counter, but you're not going to do it every single time. Or at Sephora at that, maze of the checkout counter, you might grab something, but you're not going to do it every time. Then this one writes an art supply store, which is equally as chaotic. So in my mind, those big box stores are playing the odds with that product, and with their volume, the odds are always in their favor. For us in these small and more niche creative areas, it's a lot harder to pinpoint. I have found it nearly impossible to count on one product that consistently sells for all sorts of reasons. Shifting trends, supply issues, changing needs, and more. So what do we focus on? Aside from an excellent product and excellent customer service, which to me is always the top priority, I focus on the story, the feeling, the environment. These are the things that I believe can keep a customer for life. And you don't need much to tell a story. This is a slide of the North Bennett Street School store that I operate. If you're not familiar with NBSS, I see a few familiar faces. It's a hand skills-based craft and trade school based in the North End, and one of my roles is operating the retail store. So just to be clear of everything I've just said so far, these efforts of visual merchandising that we're going to get into go hand in hand with offering great products, customer service, and at least trying to understand what people want to buy. So don't forget those very clutch things. And because my work is across retail and exhibitions, I'm going to discuss them as one because I feel they are very interchangeable. If you're wondering at a slide point, how does this relate to visual merchandising on a small scale or in a store or a market, just ask me and I have a quick explanation for it. I'm going to start with defining scrappy because when we titled this talk, you look up scrappy and it can say a lot of negative things, and that's not what I view as scrappy. So breakdown on how scrappy is often interpreted. Resourceful and determined, yes, absolutely, check. A scrappy person is someone who can find creative solutions and doesn't give up easily even when things get tough. Combative and feisty, absolutely not. Let's scratch that out. I left it here so that I can make the point that that's not what this is about. Messy or disorganized. In some contexts, scrappy can describe something that is not well organized or that is somewhat untidy. I'm leaving that up because I think that in visual merchandising, we don't need to be, especially in a creative sector, we don't need to be so pristine. There's nothing, when you buy a new tech device, say an iPhone, for example, it's very square, pristine, and vacuum sealed and heat sealed. And in creative visual merchandising, we don't need to do that. There's sort of joy in, purposeful chaos, and you'll see some of that frayed material throughout this talk. Overcoming limitations, absolutely. Scrappy individuals often operate with limited resources, whether it's time, money, or personnel. They compensate for these limitations with determination, resourcefulness, and a strong work ethic. In essence, scrappy to me embodies a mindset of resilience, creativity, and a never give up attitude. First tip, look around you. As makers or creatives, I have no doubt that your spaces or homes, studios, workbenches are overflowing with tools and materials. You need to use them. For example, at my own home, I have closets full of tapestry wool and scraps of fabric that are taking up very valuable space. And until I incorporate them into packaging or gifts or what have you, they're going to continue to take up valuable space. So use your material. I work at a trade school, as I've already told you, that's abundantly overflowing with materials. And one year in preparation for our big winter market, I came across a bin of long, abnormally long strips of wood veneer that were not usable in a woodworking capacity anymore. And in our facility, I'm always dealing with these huge industrial walls and trying to fill the space visually. And so something clicked and said, oh, this would be a great way to maximize this visual space. And so with the resources around me and the people around me, I learned how to soak the wood, the veneer, turn it into ribbons, and we made these huge bows as a decoration for this winter market. They sort of had the chance to be sort of a viral moment at the winter market. And again, could be applied to any situation in your retail world. You know, this could be a photo, a backdrop, something that you decorate a trade show booth with. Another example, you know, bunting is not, we didn't invent bunting. This is, you know, I can't claim this as my own, but what we did do to make it very brand specific to North Bennett is we used bookbinding scrap and painted it in mixed colors. So I wasn't using primary colors. So it definitely doesn't look like you went to Michael's and bought it off the shelf. So very on brand for this place. And you can see a little bit more in the wreath that we created in the back. So festive on a very tight budget. Favorite moment.
Do you mind hitting that?
Yeah, with the mouse.
Yeah. Oh, there we
Go.
go. There it is.
Yes. All right. Favorite scrappy moment of mine that has stayed with me and will stay with me forever. This is a carpenter pencil that obviously was used almost to the point of death. And it was actually on the floor about to be swept up in the garbage. And I found it one day and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so representative of North Bennett Street School and what we're selling here. To me, it represents education, it represents time, hard work, skilled labor, basically all of those things that North Bennett Street School sells. And so in my mind, it just came to embody what we do there. And so I made it a feature in this exhibition called Making Matters in this bigger wall of other found material. And I loved it so much that I painted a little copy of it as a gift for someone. And the reason I'm digging into this is that then I ended up with this. And how special would this be to be tied onto a package if you're running an online store, for example, selling product, shipping product? How sweet would that be as this very sweet personal touch on one of your goods that you've made? And such a sweet surprise. So really special moment for me, and I'll cherish that pencil forever. Exhibition signs, again, can apply to any branding experience that you're working on. For an exhibition called Continual Craft, I had to use sustainable materials because that was the theme. So no vinyl signage. So again, went all through the building, found beautiful scrap material, traced lettering, and hand painted it. So once it left this exhibition, it's just going to melt into the environment. Another great example of scrappy visual merchandising. These never came to be activated at an event or anything, but I still love them and I'm going to hold on to them forever for some future experience. Excess material. I had pads and pads of vellum from a course that wasn't going to run anymore. I just, on a whim, decided, let's see if my printer can take this. Incredibly, it could. So it's always a slippery slope to test your printer, but it's worth it because you end up with some pretty cool things. So I digitized some sketches that people had done around the building, printed them on vellum, found a free online pattern for these little candle. It's what you put over a candle for lighting at an event. Folded them, used the template, fold this vellum, and they're beautiful centerpieces, or they could be a great product made from all free resources. 3 things that I always think about when visually merchandising or designing the store or even exhibitions. Use touch. Consider materials carefully. Clear plastic packaging is sometimes necessary or the only available option, but for some it can be really a tactile ick. Use supportive materials. Choose materials that reinforce your product and brand. They're one of the simplest and most effective ways to tell your story and strengthen your brand identity. Use materials of the place. Read your environment and select materials that align with and reflect the space around you, and I'll expand on that in a few slides. On touch, these are examples of how I package my gifts that pass through the North Bennett Street School store. The whole building and facility is working with natural materials, wood, paper, paper products of all thicknesses, steel, any natural material. So I'm definitely not going to, or I'm going to really try to avoid packaging our product in plastic or synthetic material. That's a number one for me. The image on the right is for an event, for an exhibition opening. Again, scrap wood that I found, a $6 stamp. Stamped all of these, put a pin on the back. You have natural, brand appropriate tags for everybody, and so easy to make, totally inexpensive, and original to place. I brought samples for this one because I needed you all to see the visual on this. So this is actually, let me back up. I want to talk about, I had a really serious point I wanted to make about touch. Another example of another vendor. There's a gift shop in my neighborhood that sells all of these beautiful natural stones, and you go into the store and there are plants everywhere, natural product, incense. It's this lovely gift shop. And when I went to buy this beautiful natural bead bracelet there, and they packaged it in a polyester mesh cinch bag. And it just confused me and kind of made me angry a little bit. And I almost mailed them a sort of an alternative way to package these, because just the tactile thing was just off. I think they got the point on their own, because next time I went in, they adjusted their packaging, but that's a great example of a huge disconnect between product and packaging. So I wanted to make that point. So another example of touch product packaging. Sue Muldoon is a beloved member of our craft community and a renowned weaver, and she would be more than fine with me sharing this story because it was a collaborative effort. She sells these woven backpack kits that you can see photographed here. They're all natural material with cotton webbing straps. And so I bought a bunch to sell in the North Bennett Street School store. She sells them at fairs and venues all over the state and region. And when I received them, they were packaged like this. So this beautiful natural material zip tied to cardboard and then in a plastic sleeve. I knew that I couldn't sell this in my store. We needed to do something different. So I went to her website and, with her permission and her collaboration, printed off a photograph of her backpacks, traced it, uploaded it, digitized it, had it printed on cotton, totally inexpensive cotton cinch bags. So now the material is very well aligned with the product, and you're giving your customers a free bag too. But the whole thing just sort of elevated the product to be more aligned with where we are. So awesome example. And then she ended up doing it for her own product as well. So it was a super win for all of us. Note cards that I sell in the store. Again, normally you might see these in a mylar or plastic sleeve. I don't necessarily mind if someone's coming into the store and getting grubby fingers on them. It's not really going to happen. If someone makes a mess on one, I might ask them kindly to buy the card set. But generally, if I'm sacrificing one stack of note cards in the front for people to be able to feel that paper, and even the tactile experience of feeling the material and then knowing that you're going to feel that when you write a note card is huge. So this is just this minimal brand aligned packaging that I prefer to work in. Similarly, natural material, silver, handmade earrings by our students. This is how I display them in the school store. And then when someone buys them, they end up in a brown craft paper gift box. Supportive materials and being of the place. I'm going to dig into this a little bit. Use materials that complement and reinforce your product and brand. These tactile choices ground your presentation and connect your audience to a sense of place and attention. Of the place in any space, to me, is it's any space that your product lives in, whether it's a showroom, your own studio, if you have an open studio event, trade show or market, or even if you're making a connection, if your creative practice is in your own home, if that's the way you want to work, have there be an essence of that. For my own work, I think glassine, craft paper, leather, printed paper, natural ribbon, and handmade envelopes. So let's talk about this. This is a trade show that I do once a year. And again, I know this is abstract to visual merchandising in a small sort of retail environment, but I think that it's all interchangeable. So trade show on the left, this predates my time here. And what I changed and what I was going for and what I achieved was so this is an offsite trade show. When someone comes to see our work and what we're making at North Bennett, I want them to feel the feeling that they have in our building where the material is made. And this is very stock standard trade show, carpet, polyester shades, all the stuff. And often our plinth, which you see furniture on the plinth that we use for furniture is really just a visual and physical guide to not sit on the furniture. It's just a platform and keeps people aware that this is not for, touching. And so they used to be wrapped in green felt or black felt and just had no visual connection to the natural materials of the school. So upgraded this, lightened the whole thing. So when you step into this booth now, you can feel what the building feels like. It's light, airy, natural materials, cement floor, wood, earthy gray. That's important. More materials that I pulled out of our building and applied to visual merchandising: Baltic birch ply and natural cotton materials. If that jeweler is at their bench making that beautiful dish, their workbench is made of Baltic birch. So it's a direct connection for me. I mentioned the plinth before, and years ago, these were wrapped in forest green felt or black polyester. So I just want you to look at this picture and envision what that would look like. Maybe you think it would look great. For me, just a total disconnect to the furniture. So we lightened everything up and kind of let it meld into the cement floor. Museum or exhibition labels, I now put them on natural wood. They're on clear vellum labels printed at my desk on my printer, stick them down to wood that, the most money I spent was having someone cut the pieces of wood. This is a great example of scrappy visual merchandising. This is for a display case window at the Four Seasons Hotel in Boston, which anybody can go see. It's really sweet. We rent this window inside of their coffee shop, and I'm turning it over in the next month to represent jewelry. But their version that's there now, I wanted to celebrate bookbinding. And so I sort of exploited the education of bookbinders and asked a bunch of first-year students so this is foil stamping. It's something that they have to learn in the first semester. I gave them paper, asked them to learn and experiment for me so that I could use them as this backdrop. And I borrowed materials from the bindery and put it all together to then be this beautiful, shiny display case within the Four Seasons. So it's so scrappy in that I tapped into an educational moment in coursework that was already happening. I borrowed materials and I used scrap boards to build the whole thing out. In its place in the cafe at the Four Seasons Hotel, the gold leaf and foil shines in this fancy place, which in my mind psychologically aligns. And the maximalism of the display itself aligns really well with the Ken Folk designed space that's very textured and maximalist and really beautiful. Changing this window up again so the next iteration will represent joy. Going all in, find a thing, zoom in, and explode it. Don't just lean into it, go all in. It's what's going to set you apart, and that makes it worth your energy. Definitely worth your energy. The payoff is huge. Bold choices leave big impressions. I want to talk about the suede poof on the right side. Great example of going all in. I think about method dressing, which was a huge thing over this past movie cycle where you see like, Zendaya going to, doing her press tour and dressing the same, dressing for the movie. I think of that with all of this stuff. So like for the bunny, for example, gifting someone a bunny, why don't we lay it in a bed of grass? Just makes perfect sense. But sorry, back to the poof on the right. This is a beautiful curriculum required piece. It's a jewelry piece from our jewelry program. And on the very top edge is this beautifully placed stone that holds the clasp together. And it's so precious. And looking at it, I dove really deeply into that. And it made me want to just prop the whole thing up as this very precious thing. And so I found a stock furniture foot at Home Depot, added some cotton batting to the top to soften it, and made this little beautiful precious poof. And it's only about that big. And the other secondary thing that it brought me was a pop of color in an otherwise monotone exhibition. My dear bookbinding student worker did the wrapping part. And I brought this to pass around because this gives you a feeling for just the luxness of the material, and even visually it's really beautiful. You're going to have to do digital, sorry to make you get up. You can just throw it if you want. You're no doubt going to have to do some digital content if you're starting a creative business or any business for that matter. And so that's why I shared this. This is part of my In the Making program, and I interviewed last fall the last typewriter repair person. He just closed his shop after 50 some odd years. I know. He's the loveliest person. And so to elevate the experience for the virtual audience, again, method, I printed off a bunch of typewriter quotes that I typed in typewriter font just to draw people in from the virtual end of things. We hung his precious coat on the back. It was all just really sweet. But this could be an example of a market booth, even a photograph that you have on your website. So great example of pulling together in a scrappy way, very on the mark materials. The map table. So again, great example of going all in. For a recent exhibition called Then and Now, I wanted to show scenes of the North End at certain points throughout time. And I connected with the Leventhal Map Center here at the BPL. And they helped me source all the best atlases and maps of different points in time of the North End. I could have easily have printed them on the wall and called it a day, but at the same time, I really wanted to build an area where guests would sit in the middle of this exhibition and have a resting spot and take in the whole exhibition from that vantage point. And the desk needed to be something that was separate enough from all of the period furniture around that it was clearly a place where you could sit down. And so I have been working with a company that prints on fake leather. who also print on real leather, but it's extremely expensive. And so I digitized these maps, printed them on pleather, and found a door in the basement, spent $75 on the steel legs, and we ended up having this functional exhibition centerpiece that didn't take away from the furniture at all, didn't take away from the exhibitor's work at all, but gave people this engaging experience to sit down and rest. And it was really engaging. The maps told a story that was within the context of the exhibition. Great example of going all in. A personal example of going all in. This is my own obsession with making every single component of an object so that I have to buy nothing. And these were holiday cards, and the paper source stock envelopes just didn't cut it. So again, very simple diagrams and instructions online can show you how to make your own envelope. A storefront window display from a long time ago. This retail space was set above, slightly above the street, a little high, and it was on a road where there was no stop sign, no place for a car to stop. So I really had to capture their attention as they're passing by. So used materials that I already had, fluorescent pink ink and stamps and a little paint. And this was a real successful window display. Again, could be used in any market setting, photography setting, branding for your website, any of that. Tap into your world, your own bank of knowledge and experience. You have so much more than you think, and you need to mine that. Tap into a cultural moment, align with something timely and relevant to spark connection and meaning. Tap into your immediate community. Think Leventhal Map Center. Local resources can ground and amplify your work. Collaboration is usually free. I say usually because if you're doing, say, a donation product or a benefit edition or something, you're going to incur the cost of producing that. And it's literally a donation to that group that you're running this for. But generally, collaborating with another maker is free. You're already making the product. You're already spending the money on making the product. So is this person. So the collaborative part is free, and it's huge in multiplying your reach, expanding your offerings, and in my experience is a huge, powerful way to learn how to expand your creative product. There's so much to be learned there. Tap into your neighbors. Don't overlook the people right next to you. Support and inspiration are often just a conversation away. Also, we very much want to keep them in business as well. Some of the groups that I tap into, my neighbors. Studio Carta is this beautiful company in Chestnut Hill. I buy all of my cotton ribbons from her for all of my packaging and gifts. It's very aligned with the product that I sell in the store. And anytime I get to purchase from her, I feel like, you know, I'm one more person that is sustaining her business. And that's important. The Art Institute of Chicago. This is about tapping into my own base of knowledge and experience and mining that. On a recent trip to the Art Institute of Chicago, I was in this Frida Kahlo exhibition with my nephew, and I saw these exhibition labels that were just so perfect and beautiful. And as I looked closer, I realized that, oh my gosh, I know how to make these. I can do this. And I had an upcoming show, and I knew I was going to scramble to design this when I got home. And so looking at this, I said, okay, tapping into my framer or fine art framer experience, mounting a label onto colored mat board and cutting it on a bevel reverse so that when the label's on the wall, you just get this beautiful hint of color. And so that's what I did. I'm fortunate enough to have a dry mount press and a mat cutter at my work, but there are plenty of shops around that could facilitate this for you. And it turned out to be these beautiful, elevated exhibition labels that, in my mind, reminded people coming through this exhibition that all of these handmade crafts are just as stunning and worth as the Art as a Frida Kahlo painting in the Museum of the Art Institute of Chicago. So my own knowledge. Collaboration with Mass Woodworks Charlestown. This was about creating this sort of fun, frivolous product that is sort of an outlier. He's a local woodworker. He had just bought a laser engraver. And so we decided to engrave these very niche trade-specific tools onto these coasters. And anyone who comes through North Bennett who's a jewelry or a piano technician or a preservation carpenter, they're going to be obsessed with that, because what item in your home has a piano tuner engraved on it? Yeah. Great collaboration with Steel Canvas Basket Corp, a 100-year-old company in Wilmington. Very brand specific trade school shop aprons that have all the pockets in the right place for everything that we need in our craft and trade school. So free collaborations here. Tap into a cultural moment. The entire world last year was obsessed with Pesto the penguin and Moodang, the pygmy hippo. So for the winter market, we wanted to create a product that was educational in foundation and that we knew we could sell and have a huge hit. And so our jewelry instructor, department head, and I developed this project that taught the jewelry students how to do mass production. And so we chose these icons, and we sold every one of them at the winter market. So a great example of just tapping into a moment can be a great success story for a small creative business. Big, big, big one. Learn to take delicious, juicy photos. It can be almost done at no cost. Pop-up light box. I use one at my shop for all of my online store products that I probably spend $2 on at Amazon. You can put something else in, use the icky white plastic interior of it. You can modify this. Or you can get a really nice one at B&H. You can spend, I'm sure, thousands of dollars on a light box, but you don't need to. A sunlit window is free. A sheet of paper, if you need a backdrop or a surface, can be free. Or I use paper that I saw in the store that's $1.30 a sheet. And it's this beautiful, it's Hanum Amra. It's a bookbinding paper that all the binders use. And it has a slight texture and comes in different tones, and it's $1.30 a sheet. Great backdrop. A wall or floor is free. Camera. Odds are you have a smartphone. If you don't, it's probably time you do. If it's not time for you, you can rent a camera from anywhere between $13 to $100 a day. But I can't emphasize, if you don't have a smartphone, which the majority of us do, this is the most efficient tool for me in visual merchandising, photographing and product, editing, directly uploading to my website or Shopify. And then more importantly, your creative perspective is free. So all of these things are really simple and essential to take delicious, juicy photos. I'm sharing this as this is my personal work. And as a great example of a juicy, delicious photo, you can feel that this is a heavy cotton duck. Can you see the ridges? And then you can feel here that it's a textured fake leather, or you probably might think it's leather. It's not. But you can just feel with your eyes that these materials feel really good. These are some online store product photos just to show you clean, crisp, captivating, quick, like real quick, simple images that I use to sell product. Toyo toolboxes, great composition of mixture of colors and tones. You can clearly tell that they're metal, they're powder coated metal. These beautiful handmade notebooks by Ash Nunez, who's a bookbinding graduate. You can feel the texture of her paste paper, and you kind of know how they're going to feel in your hand when you write in them. Notebooks by India Patel. They're just delicious on their own, but what I did here was try to satisfy every left or right, where you have this very knolled, everything's lined up but not touching, very linear image that is very satisfying. And then the sea of them piled on like just a pile of, beautiful, delicious papers. So these are images that I use on the North Kennett Street School store to sell product. I love this one. This is a new product promotion, and it's sneaky complex, and I'll tell you why. So first of all you see is blue, and it's every blue is very satisfying in this picture. It just feels really nice on my eyes, and hopefully it does for you all. Maybe? Okay, good. Yes. And you can feel the material. So the top corner, this is a reissue of an historic t-shirt that was made at the trade school. It's an original logo from way, way, way back, printed in the same colorway. And it's this crisp blue on white cotton. And then below is a real cotton sweatshirt, not a polyester blend, which is perfectly fine. Any heathered sweatshirt is going to be a polyester blend. Let's not kid ourselves. But these are full cotton, and you can feel that. Tin campfire mugs. You can feel, when I look at this picture, I can hear the sound when I hit it with something. It makes a ping. And then most importantly, these blue bars on the bottom are very niche, specific to preservation carpentry tool. And so any person in the preservation carpentry field, for example, that's going to come across this image is going to stop and say, oh my God, that's a blue bar. She sells the blue bars. And that's how kind of sneaky complex this promo image is. And I just love it. Also, the blue bars can actually move a house, in case you were wondering. Another example of like totally tapping into the psyche of our trade school community in this very on-brand merchandising mode. Anybody in our building would say, oh, those are Carhartt hats, obviously, because who else makes that bright orange hat? So it's just so simple. I'm not identifying it as a hat, but it is. And I just love, it's just a great layup of color and tone. Coming to the end, some of my favorite resources I wanted to share. Clearbags.com and papermart.com are great sources for packaging ideas for small product, lots of glassine envelopes, paper goods, craft paper envelopes of all different sizes if you want to sort of make an original looking package. Lineco.com is an archival products company, boxes, envelopes, paper goods, tapes. Jam paper is great. Contrato and Spoonflower are textile printing companies. Contrato prints on a sea of fabrics. And I share that because I've showed custom printed fabrics in this talk. And I also think that's a great material to start to investigate as a packaging, a way to package your product if you're shipping it out to, or giving it as gifts or at a market or what have you. You could create a tablecloth for a trade show with custom printed fabric, and that's an incredible moment to sell your brand in that kind of environment. Artist and Craftsman Supply, my favorite art supply store in the region. Studio Carta, Chestnut Hill, I get all my ribbon. Gather here in Cambridge, beloved fabric store, wonderful people, and wild array of fabrics and materials that you can use in packaging. Home Depot, I find so much random material that I can use in all sorts of different applications. And most importantly, my own closets, both at home and at work. Just reminding you that, as we said earlier, look around you. Free material is everywhere around you, and it's just a matter of sort of taking a beat and figuring out how to turn it into something that is very brand specific for you. The last thing I want to say is to give credit. You're not doing this alone. whoever you rely on, trade with, learn from, be gracious and share the credit of your work. It's not only good for your soul and your relationships, but it's very good business. And to give credit, well, first of all, thank you. But this photograph here was a collaboration between myself and my dear colleague, Barbara Rudkowski. This is a photo spread that we took for our Benchmarks magazine. And I'm sharing it specifically because it's such a beautiful photo, but we took this just natural sunlight. We threw a board down in a window. I staged all of this product, which is all product I sell in the store. And Barbara used her camera, and that's all we did. We had no light, no powered lighting or anything. And this is it in print. So just to show you, what very little can do to all of your product. And then the last thing before we get to questions is I don't have enough for everybody, but I would be happy to ship you one. I made some packets of materials for you to feel. I have two examples. One is for North Bennett Street School. It's very brown craft paper, studio carta ribbon, very natural, clean materials. And there's even a swatch in there of printed vellum. And then my personal work, which is the opposite, it's very colorful, maximalist, still very tactile. You're going to see in this paste paper, hand painted paper, a piece of my pleather. And the most important point of these is that I sat and looked around each of these environments, and I pulled these together in, I think, a few minutes. And that's sort of the point of this talk, is that if you're sitting in your space and you're trying to come up with these visual ideas of how to market your product and how do you package it, how do you brand it, just sit and take a beat and look around you, and there's just an abundance of material sitting around you. So it took more time to package these than it did to come up with the material. So I want to give these to whoever would like one, and if you don't get one, I would put one together and mail it to you. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Okay. Would you mind still handling our question portion? So I'm going to be off screen for those of you online, but we have reached the official question portion of the event, and then we'll move on to audience questions. We just have a handful, and then so kind of be thinking through the questions that you want to ask Kristen. And then for those of you who are online, if you go ahead and drop those in the chat, my coworker Nikki here is going to be kind enough to read those out for us. So do feel free to share, and we will get to those of you online as well as in person. So to start us off, you told us a little bit about your background, but can you tell us about your journey as an artist and a maker? Absolutely. And how you got started?
Sure. My childhood through college was as a performing artist, a musician, but at the same time, making things, playing with material was pretty much my whole, everywhere around me. And I think getting into this vein of work, merchandising, retail, visual merchandising, short story is when I was done with college, I was also done with performing arts. So I wanted to close the door on that. And I ended up in the high-end sort of bespoke custom picture framing world. And that brought me great satisfaction because it was all handwork all the time. And ultimately, that's kind of where my heart is at rest, is anything to do with playing materials or building things by hand. And when I got to North Bennett, that's sort of when things, visual merchandising way.
Thank you. So what is at least one thing that you wish more artists and makers knew about the business side of?
This is easy. Because there is one thing that I wish more artists knew about the business side of their work, is that there is a business side of your work. You can't avoid that.
Yeah.
it's eating your peas, or, if it's Brussels sprouts, whatever is your least favorite vegetable, it's that, and you have to do it. There's no way around it. You can make it as efficient as possible with all of the tools that we have. These are not this, but we have so many tools to make it so much more efficient and to make the Brussels sprouts easier. But that's the number one thing, that there's a business side of your work, and it exists. You can't avoid it.
If I may offer a free way to season your Brussels sprouts, as it were. Something to note that here in the business library, we do have that entrepreneurial support. So we have a whole host of programming everything that we do here is free to the public. So you can always attend all of our entrepreneurial programming, including that one that I mentioned before earlier about like deciding on your legal entity or business entity. We have a couple of lawyers who come and have office hours here a couple times a month who you can meet with about contracts, business planning, that kind of thing. And then we also have the InnoLab just on the other side of this wall. For those of you online, it's down here in the central library. That InnoLab has half of it painted green for a green screen. It's got a light box in there. So you mentioned the $22 light box. You even have it for free as long as you have your library card.
That's amazing.
So we have, and then we also have the Adobe Creative Suite. So if you do want a little bit of a fancier editing option than your phone,
yeah, that's great.
All right. What marketing strategies have worked best for you, both online and in person?
For me personally, for this work and my own private work, in person, always. And that's specific to me because number one, I really like engaging with people. That's one of my strengths is talking to people and making them feel comfortable when they come into my shop, and keeps bringing them back. Online, again, there are plenty of tools, and the visual juicy photographs and all of that. It's all there for you. It can be fickle. We deal with algorithms, and everything that you might lose a whole swath of people if you're only focused on that. So if I have any advice on this, it's to hone your people skills, because that's what makes people keep coming back.
I have had this conversation with Kristen before because I know her from North Bennett Street School and was asking, how do I get into these like small retail spaces? That was the same thing you said. You were like, go talk to people.
Exactly. It's intimidating too, but you have to do it. It's the only way someone's going to fall in love with your product and fall in love with you and want to sell your product, is you just have to. And you might have a lump in your throat. I certainly have many times, but you just sort of have to be brave and believe in your product and go into a shop and say, would you like to carry this? And you're going to get turned down a lot, but at some point you won't be.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
Okay. How did you find your first customers or clients?
Friends, family, network spreads the word. For me personally, my own personal work, I had a product line at one point and I made my entire family wear it. And then it grew from there. It's hard to answer that question for North Bennett because it's a 140-year-old institution. It sort of has its built-in network of people who are buying specific tools and product. But the best answer is start with your community, friends, family, spread the word.
And what are the most common mistakes that you see creatives make when they are starting a business?
Again, I can't really get specific into the weeds about this, but I want to generalize and say that they forgot that it's a business. Going back to that first question, forgetting that you got to deal with the business part of it. And I think this might be in one of the next questions, but I'll tip it off here.
Sure.
Something that I wish that creatives would remember and maybe start to adopt, and that we can continue on moving forward, is that you're not going to, there's no sacrifice. There's no sacrificing your artistic and creative process if you lean into the business part of it. That's kind of the point. You want to be able to sustain your livelihood. And I often see sort of whether it's an ego-driven thought process or what have you, that, oh, I can't, I'm not in this for money. I can't do that. The two can coexist, and we need to make sure that that's really, the norm, is that there's no artistic or creative sacrifice, in making money off of your product. So, but forgetting that there's a business side.
Yeah. It's nice to eat and have housing.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
What mindset shifts do you think are important for creatives to make in order to embrace entrepreneurship?
This is the one I was going to say. Yeah. Just again to reiterate, it is perfectly fine and normal and great to have to think as a business person and as a creative at the same time. You're not sacrificing anything either way. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And what should creatives or makers consider before scaling up?
Again, very easy question here. I'm sorry that there's such an easy.
Oh, I love it.
But
great.
Before scaling your business is, writing a million times over how are you going to do that? And I'll use myself as an example. I've no shame here. I started a very small business many years ago, and it certainly didn't fail, but I had to close it down because life changes happened. Had to move, had to downsize. So then I didn't have the space to produce what I was producing. But a big question that I didn't answer when I started it was, how would this scale? If I don't have a plan for being in a bigger place, I've already cut myself off at the knees. So just that big question of how, like breaking it down. If I'm making this small thing on this small surface right now, and this took me a few minutes, if I then have to make 50 of them, how much more square footage do I need, and what systems do I need to do that? So asking yourself over and over again is, how is this going to work?
And you've touched on this a little bit throughout your presentation, but in a more explicit way, what role does community and collaboration play specifically within a sustainable creative business?
The most important role. This is a case in point. All of the services and programs offered here, these are all tools to help you have a good foundation for starting a business, whether it's small, medium, large. All of these free informational sessions. My programming season has been free sessions to help guide you. Those are all community services. And then that doesn't even tap into my point about tapping into your neighborhood. The person that you know really well, either whether it's your gift shop in your neighborhood or your neighbor who owns a shop or what have you, or just your neighbor who is out in the world and could be wearing, your brand new glasses that you just started producing. That's an example of, this is sustaining your business through your community. So it's kind of the most important thing in my mind. Yeah. It's where you're going to start, and it's who's going to sort of sustain you by propagating the knowing of your product, the quality of your product. Is that an okay answer?
That's great. Okay. We have moved on to the audience portion of the evening. We've got, are we into 4:30? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. We've got just about 30 minutes. So let's start with our audience folks, and we'll take a few of those, and then we'll shift to online, and then we'll shift back, we'll flip back and forth. So if anyone is interested in asking a question, just raise your hand. Yes, go for it.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was super enlightening. I think one thing that's really interesting to me, in particular to creative and sustainable businesses, is as we start to scale, sometimes trade-offs start showing up. And some of the things that you spoke to about being really thoughtful and intentional about things like packaging and other aspects can be put aside in search of trying to produce more and get to more people. So just interested in your advice on that.
Would you mind repeating it for the microphone?
Oh, sure. Oh, because that group. Okay. The question is, when you're scaling a creative business, sacrifices are inevitable because you might have to exchange, packaging and the things that I was talking about in an effort to get that business going and out into the world. Is that a reasonable way to put it? Okay. So this might not be friendly advice necessarily. It might sting a little bit, but it's just the way I feel about if you're going into this area, if you're going to start a creative business and put your product out there, this is part of those planning portion. Like you have to, you really have to. You have to think of all those little things. And I think you're going to be working, 14 hours a day to get that thing going. So make sure that part of that time is budgeted towards dialing out those things that I was talking about, the packaging. And it's kind of, I think what it comes down to for me is maximizing your efficiency. There's a lot of batch production that goes on in my place of work and even in my personal practice. This was like, to put these together, for example, batch production, cut a batch of this, and just maximizing your efficiency and streamlining that piece, because I'm going to be pretty unforgiving if you're working with these beautiful materials at this one scale, and then the next thing I go to buy one as a gift for someone and it's in like a plastic envelope. So I know that's not the most friendliest advice, but I just feel really strongly about that, it's about brand authenticity. And that to me is like number one. And that's evident through all of this, through how you're going to package. So I guess just try not to skimp on those things. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely really agree. It's something I just see a lot of businesses do.
Yeah.
You go to buy something, you see your favorite shop, it's like now you can get it like nationwide, and then it's like, oh, what happened to the pretty bag or the nice ribbon?
I know, and that's of course that's going to happen. Can I answer that question in a sort of a different way? If we're thinking of supply chain issues, for example, that's a really good one for now, because there's just difficulty getting materials in. Tap into that creative brain, tap into your base of knowledge and all of your experience, find a different solution that still is authentic to your brand. Take the note cards, for example, just one example of very minimal packaging. It still looks super elevated and is on brand and authentic to what I sell. But it's totally scaled back and eliminates the need for any packaging that you might not be able to get at the moment. And by the way, these are cookie envelopes. They're still nice, waxy, kind of natural parchment paper, but they're cookie envelopes. They're not meant for this. So thank you for the question.
And we'll take one more in the audience and then do two virtual, and then we'll switch back.
Been listening to you. I recommend a book that will surprise you. It's the biography of Stephen Jobs, written by Walter Isaacson. In that book, it talks about Steve Jobs' obsession. Now you mean obsession of what you're talking about. The fonts in the manuals, the design, the materials of the Apple II. If you go into the Apple store down the street, in my opinion, you will see it still exists over 40 plus years. Their computers look different than anything else on the market. And that book surprisingly talks about his obsession about design, field material, the paper that were in the manual.
Mm-hmm. Brand
There it
identity.
is. And you can actually go to a store in JP called the Bike Shop, and you will see he has a computer museum. And he's got Apple IIs, and they look real different than the PCs of the same generation that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, all those computers work. And there's a lot more, but I'll take it offline with you.
Yeah, thank you. Great point. Brand identity. Steve Jobs was, really the
strong understanding of it.
Yep. Thank you for the comments.
Yeah.
And then we're
You're
going
welcome.
to switch to 2 online questions, which Nikki is going to share with us.
The first one is, if I need to hang something on display, what hardware or techniques do you use, especially if you don't want to make any holes in the wall?
I love this question because constantly dealing with it, and I use about 12 different types of tape and this and that and nails and screws. Impossible to answer without knowing the kind of wall you're using. But I will say across the board, command strips actually work. They hold they're made to hold sheer weight, and they do it really well. But I often am going into all sorts of creative avenues to figure out how to hang something in an original or authentic way. I buy S-hooks often. If you're at a trade show, you can find on Amazon S-hooks that hook over the pipe and drape safety pins. So it's kind of tough. I'm happy to answer that question if you have a specific material, and you can send that to me if you'd like.
And then do we have another question?
Is there any difference in visual merchandising strategies between selling online and selling in store?
Yes, there is. Number one, I mean, you can imagine that there would be, because it's a completely different experience walking into a store and handling product versus online. I mean, the standard for sort of online product photography is a blank backdrop and just a product floating, which I don't love, but it is the norm, and it's visually sort of accepted. It's just a clear way to see product on your online store. I do try to align the two to keep the brand aligned, but it's tricky because of that standard format of online shopping. Everything just has to be on sort of a white background so that your product is very clear and the colors pop. In store, I create a lot more. You may have seen one of the very first slides was a picture of the store that I run, and because it suits my design sensibility, it's jam-packed with product and has something for everybody. And the thing next to this thing enhances that thing. And so you're having this sort of visual experience all around. You see wood mallets next to beautiful printed dish towels with spoons and wood materials printed all over it. So in a store environment, brick and mortar environment, you have that super fun opportunity to use all the products to sort of connect with one another, where that's a little tough online. I don't know if that's a succinct answer, but it's the best I can do.
The question before about the walls,
Yeah.
they said brick wall.
Oh.
You have a lot of experience working with brick walls.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, you'll enjoy this answer. Let's see. If you don't have, it's hard to find them anywhere, but masonry nails, I have found great success with if your mortar is at just a certain stage and time period. And a masonry nail, it's very hard to hammer in, but it holds a lot. At my own home, I have brick walls, and I have gently drilled in and tapped in a plastic washer, and then just a screw into that. I've had good luck with that. More often than not, I try to find an existing hole in the brick wall and use. Beyond that, if you're talking something extremely heavy, you need to go and source specific masonry mollies or masonry anchors, which are a whole other ball of wax and totally doable, but you have to be prepared with a hammer drill. What kind of weight are you hanging? And then the other simpler way to hang on brick is to use Gorilla Tape or command strips. Again, if they're connecting on the brick surface, it holds pretty good shear weight. For 2D objects, I certainly wouldn't use anything heavy. on command strips on a brick wall or Gorilla Tape on a brick wall, but those tapes work. Thank you for the question.
So that's our 2 online. We'll do 2 more in person. Anybody have questions for Kristen? Mm-hmm.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you because I've learned that art is like it's personal. When you develop your own art capacity, you like everybody is different, and inside one person you can find different kind of style, and I really appreciate your style.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much because you're taking small simple things and you're doing extraordinary things. You transform them to extraordinary, useful, beautiful stuff,
Thank you.
which is not something simple to do. It is time. It is skills. It is a lot of stuff. It is mastering objects. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for that. That's really sweet. Making me tear up over here.
To turn that into a question, that is so nice.
Yeah.
To turn that into a question, I was also relatedly wondering if you have recommendations for like artists or designers or publications that can help people get exposed to like different visual languages on how to do merchandising. So for instance, the way that you photograph the hats or the way that you photograph the toolboxes, like there's a very particular visual language there that is your own and like exists in the world as well in related ways. But then there's also the super maximalist approach to photography and that kind of thing. Like, do you have recommendations on places people can look if they don't know what they're discovering their own visual language?
Unfortunately, I don't, because for me, I'm inspired by every place that I go into. And obviously, don't go into a place or scroll through social media and copy. But and you also don't want to be taking, you don't want to be unoriginal. But there are just a lot of cues out there, whether you're looking at stores online that you love, or into your local gift store, or your museums, your local art institutions. There's just a lot to be captured in there, and we often ignore it, or we're so glazed over scrolling that you're not capturing that information. But it's kind of another thing that I maybe tried to convey in the talk is that bank those things in your bank of knowledge and take screenshots. I take a lot of screenshots, and it just, like, for example, I'm looking at the books behind you all. I mean, that is definitely inspiring to me and will inspire some sort of display at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
For those online, it is an entire wall of books, and they're all blue because they are, oh gosh, I'm pretty sure that is the International Business Directory. Ooh. So that is, yeah, it's just A to Z business directory.
But I'm sorry I don't have, textbooks or anything like that. I think I want to answer that in reverse because I just said, textbooks. I don't, part of putting an original vision or idea out there is not, learning something by the textbook. I think it keeps something authentic to me. And so back to gathering inspiration out there, and also important to keep our local small shops in business. Go to your local small shops and see what merchandise in their store just really speaks to you, or where do you gravitate to right away? And what about that corner do you love? Do they have a bunch of colors mixed together? Or is it a bunch of, objects that are linearly stacked?
Yeah.
I made it up. You never want to copy, but that's just like, there's so much inspiration out there that to find to just see something and see why it makes you feel excited, and then implement that in your own product. And I just want to comment on the amazing compliments that you gave me back there by just reminding you what that makes me think of is that I think number one, and I will kind of live or die by this sentiment, is that your own authenticity and your authentic footprint and what you're putting out is number one. You know, time's going to keep on ticking. You know, not a ton of time to make this happen, so make it authentically yours, and that should be number one, I feel. And so I appreciate you so much commenting on that. And even if your artistic practice is in like 3 different areas, that's still all your authentic perspective.
Do we have another?
Yeah. How do you like vet? It's kind of a 2-part question. How do you vet mentors and collaborators? And B, how do you sort of deal with conflicts that arise from those like relationships?
Vetting mentors and collaborators. I'm trying to think of a bad collaboration I've had. And I don't know if I've ever had one that has ended negatively, but if anything, it just fizzled out. That's more about me not loving conflict than anything. But as far as vetting collaborators or mentors, what I go for on behalf of North Bennett is really aligned brands and plenty of time to just understand that they're established. Actually, I have a great example for that, for negative and positive collaboration. It's all about taking the time. You know, don't rush that collaboration. Even collaborating with a friend can be traumatic, you know? So taking the time, understanding that company. I think of the aprons that I collaborated on. Long-standing institution. We work with the same materials. We have the same sort of industrial setup. And that worked really well because there was just a ton of communication and we took our time. Whereas there was another collaboration more recently, not in my area, that happened very quickly and was all in good, you know, all with great intentions. But then we sort of learned something about that company after the fact. And I think maybe would have collaborated had we known that. And that was about timing. It was rushed. It was too quick. I don't know if that's helpful, but you also just have to listen to your stomach, you know? But I think taking your time. And also, when I've spoken about collaboration, it is the moment to learn. So if you are in a conflict, that's a huge lesson learned. Like you're learning how to be flexibly creative and share the creative power and recognizing that it'll be over soon. Like you can walk away from that. It's not going to kill you. Does that help at all?
I think we had one more question over here, and then we'll do 3 questions online.
Oh, okay.
I'm curious, is there a place, a space, or maybe an association where creatives get together?
I believe there are probably lots.
Would you just repeat?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a place or space where creatives get together?
It's really media based a lot of times.
There would be lots. I've never really joined a group like that, but I join, my community is surrounded by creatives by choice. And my volunteer work is with creative entities by choice. I'll give a plug for Raw Artworks and Beyond Walls in Lynn, creative groups. So I'm sure that there are plenty of associations for creatives to spend time together, but I do them by choice.
I would just add too, there is some through the library. I know some of the branches have a fiber arts groups, and there's also like a creative writing group. So depending on what kind of you're looking for, that could be an option as well.
Thank you.
Yes. So what insight can you give to determine how much inventory you should carry? Do you make a one or a dozen in anticipation of several orders so that the buyer doesn't have to wait to get their purchase?
Great question. Speaking from two different minds, if I'm starting my own business, which I probably will at some point in the next few years as a side business, and speaking on behalf of a trade school store, which supplies tools to 150, 60 students a year, two different examples of how to navigate inventory. For the trade school store, I'm small enough that I cannot buy huge volumes of inventory. It's just not realistic. And that stings me in the end because I pay a little bit more money because I'm only buying, 28 of something versus 1,000. But that's just the price of doing business at that size. And we just dance around it. It's not a money-making venture, really. For my own personal work, my goal would be to affordably make sure I have more than I expect to sell, just slightly over more, because that makes me think of customer service. Like I think of how disappointing it is when you order something online from an artisan or what have you, and the Shopify system is telling you that it's in stock, and then you get this really depressing email like a week later and says, sorry, I'm out of stock on this. And that happens to me at North Bennett because I'm out of a certain shirt size or something. So starting my own thing, I would just put the money out at the front and make sure that I have a little over what I might anticipate on selling, because it goes so far with customer service to make sure that you have enough product.
I had also spoken previously about, like, in bookbinding, you're doing batches based on like bulk material sizes and doing the math for like how many can you get out of your material and still make your personal hourly on it. Like, how long does it take?
Yeah, that's a piece of small business, creative small business, that is an entirely different other topic that I haven't even sorted out for my own practice. North Bennett's one thing, like there's a firm count every year. I have the numbers, it's pretty clear. But like Elizabeth has just said, mapping out, taking a board and measuring out how much product you will get out of that one board is a science, and you have to invest the time in it. Going back to the business side, you cannot avoid it. That's your Brussels sprout.
The next question says, thank you for a beautiful presentation. Loved it. My friend bakes dessert and snacks and finds it challenging to find alternative packing other than plastic, as the food leaves oil stains or paper materials and food interactions / visuals with others. Where can he look for in finding other materials to pack or innovate around plastic?
Well, assuming you're seeing this, yes, you are. I can't speak to specific foods, like how oily is the food, what food grade materials hold in oil on your baked goods. But, I use alternative packaging materials that make no sense for a craft school or a craft business. And I'm sure that there is some alternative for the food industry as well. And maybe it's as simple as, triple wrapping or buying post-consumer plastic goods. I think, without knowing what product we're actually talking about, how I would like to buy one of your baked goods is in a parchment envelope. That's how I would love to receive it and eat it, and it would be super satisfying. Is that helpful?
We will assume so.
Okay.
And we'll get a follow-up chat if not.
Okay.
The next says, what are the factors that go into determining the sale price? Cost of goods, production time, shipping, handling, limited edition series, etc.
All of those things.
Yeah.
You named all of them. That's it. Like cost of goods. Again, you know, if you're making batch, a Brussels sprout moment that you have no choice but to do, and I'm terrible at, is taking the time to stopwatch how long it takes you from point A to point Z, and then measuring out what did you spend for that board. You're getting 20 things out of it. There's your cost of goods. But basically everything that you just said is it. You listed everything. Time, cost of goods, shipping, handling, all of your other, you know, peripheral costs that you might have. Website. I pay $30 a month for my personal website. That rolls into my product. Subscriptions. If you're using like a MailChimp service, which is super helpful for really professional looking business emails, because you can pull images into it and send a really robust newsletter or mailer, that might be $10 a month. Taxes, packaging, which is what we're talking about here. I would hope that if you've learned anything from this talk, you do not spend a lot of money on packaging. So I think that, yeah, you asked the question, you listed all of the essentials, but yeah, all of the extra stuff, website, taxes, business, subscriptions, that all you need to account for those.
And then the rest are just giving thanks to you and how great you have done.
Thank you.
And with that, I believe we're at time. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you all
Kristen.
so
This is
much.
amazing.
I would love to